Welcome back. Before we begin, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and comment. When you do, it helps my channel grow. All comments are welcome. I look forward to your feedback. And now, Chad Fury and the Dragon Song, Chapter 3, Sing the Song. The first thing I remember is hearing voices. I couldn't tell what the voices were saying, but I was definitely hearing voices. I could barely force my eyes open. I remember seeing a light. Everything was too blurry. I couldn't focus my eyes. All I could make out were brown, people-shaped figures. I soon drifted back into unconsciousness. When I came to again, I had more of my wits about me. I saw women in brown robes walking around and talking. I tried moving my right arm, but it only moved a few inches before it stopped abruptly. I stared at my arm and saw that I was handcuffed to a metal-framed chair. I moved my left arm and found it was restrained in the same way. I looked down. My shirt and shoes were missing. My ankles were chained to the chair like my wrists. I tried to move the chair, but it wouldn't budge. I yelled out, "Hey, let me go." One of the robed women turned and looked at me. It was Lisa. Lisa walked up to me and put a finger to her lips. "You just be still now," she said. "There's nothing you can do, and struggling will only make it worse." "Worse?" I shouted. "What do you think you're doing to me? Let me out of here." I jerked and strained at my bonds. Lisa shook her head from side to side, turned away, and walked out the only door I could see. The rest of the women followed her. I didn't count how many there were, but at least 20 or more of them paraded out of the door and left me all alone. I don't know how much time passed. It seemed like hours. I was feeling sick, probably from whatever they used to knock me out. I continued to struggle, testing my restraints against the arm of the chair. There seemed to be no way to break my bonds. After a while, the woman started coming back through the door. At the front of the line was an older woman. She looked to be about 70. She stood directly in front of me while the others formed a circle around us. The old woman called out, "Lisa." Lisa left her place in the circle and stood next to the woman. She lowered her eyes and replied sheepishly, "Yes, matron." The old woman clenched her teeth and hissed out through them, "What is this?" The old woman was pointing at my tattoo. Lisa trembled and replied, "It is a dragon, matron." The matron whispered, "We're ruined." The old woman looked around the room and appeared to study each face for a moment. In full voice, she addressed the entire group. The totem inscribed on the subject must represent a real animal, one of the 4 totems. I made that clear in the instructions I gave. "Lisa, explain this to your sisters. Tell us how this happened." Lisa's voice hitched as she began, "Matron, I beg your forgiveness. I thought he had settled upon the bear. As you instructed, I could not force his choice with my voice. I had to let it be his decision. I waited an entire week. There were no others choosing one of the 4 animal totems. This one told me he had chosen the bear." The matron shook her head. "We are out of time, Lisa. The abomination has tracked us to Oklahoma City. They're close to taking us, and they will stop at nothing to get our pages of the book. Tell me, what did you do with the serum?" Lisa swallowed hard and spoke loudly. "I did exactly as you instructed, matron. I placed most of it in the ink used by the artist, and the rest I rubbed onto his arms and chest." The old woman turned her attention to me. "Tell me, son, did you dream?" I stared into her eyes and said loudly, "Go to hell." The corners of the old woman's mouth turned up slightly in a partial smile. "Well, at least you have spirit," she said. From somewhere within her robe, the matron pulled out a small, double-edged dagger. She brought the tip of the dagger to my chest and drug it across quickly. I yelped. The old woman put the dagger away, bent down slightly, and placed her hand over the fresh, bleeding cut. "I ask you again," the woman demanded, "did you dream?" I didn't answer her, but my mind flashed through the contents of my recent dreams. The matron smiled. "I see that you did dream. You dreamed of dragons." The matron straightened up and used her robe to wipe my blood from her hand as she addressed the group. Sisters, the subject has been prepared, but I put it to you, what should we do? Do we proceed with the song, or do we turn him out in hopes of another, more suitable candidate? A voice came from behind me. I couldn't see who was speaking. Matron, if I may. The matron nodded, and the voice continued. We risk very little by attempting the song. It is true that this man may not survive. It is also true that he may not transform because the totem is not a match to the serum. But we don't know what the effects of the song will be. He may become useful to us. The matron lowered her head and clasped her hands together beneath her chin. She was clearly thinking it over. Finally, she spoke. Agreed. We will try. Sisters, prepare to sing the songs of each of the totems. We will begin with the Song of the Bear. A voice from my right spoke up. Matron, if I may interrupt. The matron nodded. What is it, Sister Emily? The woman to my right continued. We've not reset the frequencies of our trance resonators. Perhaps we should do that now, before we forget. The matron reached into her robe and pulled out what looked like a 2-inch glass cube with silver and gold edges. She held the cube in the palm of her right hand and stretched out the index finger of her left hand over the top of the cube. When her finger rested on the cube, it began glowing with a soft orange light. It pulsed like the beating of a heart. The matron addressed the room. Ladies, are we ready? She looked around the room, and I looked too. All of the women I could see were holding similar cubes in the same way. The cubes were glowing with the same pale orange and pulsating, each to its own heartbeat. The matron seemed to be satisfied with what she saw. The matron continued, Sisters, first, I will reset our passkey. The old woman sang an unfamiliar melody, and the cubes changed to all of the colors of the rainbow, with the matron's changing tones. The matron continued, Now, I will change our communication frequency. She sang again, but this time it sounded more like someone practicing musical scales. The cubes glowed blue, then red, and then back to the soft orange. The ladies put their cubes back into their robes as the old woman took a position directly in front of me within the circle. Once again, the matron addressed the group. We shall begin the bear song. The matron moved her mouth like she was singing, but I heard no sound. Then, suddenly, there was a low bass growl coming from her mouth. Others began joining in. It was a cacophony of growls and shrieks. After a few more seconds of this, I felt something snap inside my head. It was like a chain breaking. My heart pounded in my chest, and I felt my guts twisting. The singing, if you could call it that, became louder and higher. My arms twisted. I felt my feet contorting. There was nothing I could do. My body was being molded and twisted and reshaped. The experience was far from pleasant. I screamed in pain, but the sounds of my screams were muffled by the inhuman sounds the women around me were making. When the song ended, I slumped down in my chair. If it hadn't been for the restraints, I would have slid out of the chair and onto the floor. 2 women pulled me back up into the chair. The matron called for a break and said they would sing the song of the lion totem in 10 minutes. After the room had emptied, I noticed that I had lost control of my bowels and bladder during the ordeal. I cried. I couldn't help it. I sobbed like a child, and I couldn't stop. When the women returned, I was still sobbing, sitting in my own feces, urine, and sweat. The women seemed totally unmoved by my plight. They did bring me some water before starting, but soon they were singing again, and I was writhing and contorting like before. I made it through the second song, much like the first, but much weaker and more exhausted than the first time. I may have blacked out briefly during the third and fourth songs, but somehow I made it through. When the fourth song finished, I felt as though I were dead. I had no strength. I couldn't even lift my head. I remember hearing the old woman speaking, "We have failed in the creation of our protector." None of the totem transformations adhered. The abomination took Sister Alice 3 days ago, and now we are at risk of being taken or killed off, one by one. Presently, we are too tired to plan our next course of action. The council will convene tomorrow evening to discuss what will be done. For now, I need volunteers to return this young man. Good night, my sisters. Get some rest. My shackles were removed and I was dragged by my wrists outside the building to my black Ford Interceptor parked in an alley. I was placed in the back seat of my car. It was dark and I was cold. I passed out